Try the microphone, huh?
Yeah, well, I got to point it in the right direction.
Yeah,
I found one that was reasonably priced, and I tested it here on Facebook, and it seemed to work pretty good. I mean, my wife was listening at home, and she said I can even hear you walking up the steps. So we'll see if it does the same
We
thing.
need some in the southern part of the county, so.
My kids like to do that, and so, yeah, we walk around.
Hello, Ty.
Who said that?
I said it. You said it. I said it and then I looked down.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. I was like, well, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
So you're still on TV.
You faked me out.
Okay, everybody saw him, but he said, "We don't know." I didn't catch it.
He's an ambassador to Somalia and whatever else is in there.
I said, "Understand that."
Well, yeah, he says, yeah.
Oh,
my goodness. But he's always in some place that's making some terrible trouble, you know.
yes, and he had been trying to find it, so I said, "Really?"
Yeah.
No, I won't.
I've got two grade students in everything around now.
Anywhere?
Everyone now. Yeah. It's very, practice up here. Turkeys here. They keep the standards over here. You know, I mean, oh, you can't even know. So lovely to meet you.
It's nice to meet you.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm assuming nobody was here an hour ago by mistake. Good.
I almost was.
Really?
My wife reminded me. Otherwise, I would have been here an hour early.
Yeah, we had to run around and change clocks all over the place this morning, and the microwave, the stove. Welcome to First Universalist of New Madison on this nice, bright, cheery, but brisk fall. Full sweater. I even had sleeves on my sweater today, so you know it's getting colder. But the heat is on, so everybody here is comfortable. This is time change weekend. Hopefully everybody's back on schedule, dropping back an hour. And we're going to be a little confused because I'm kind of throwing in summer solstice along with, or winter solstice along with time change. Just for the fun of it, because of the slides and because of some of the stuff that was going on, so we're getting them a little bit mixed up. But we're approaching the longest day of the year anyway, so, and we may not have any special occasion marking winter solstice when it does come, so we'll see. Do we have any announcements? Yes?
We want to welcome our visitor today, Mary.
Oh.
And she is coming in with Dolly, obviously, and I believe you're cousins, right?
Yeah.
Great, wonderful.
Are you local, Mary, or are you visiting from far afield?
Florida.
From Florida, yeah. It's nice to have you here, and you're welcome anytime.
She thinks it's terribly cold.
Yes, indeed.
For Florida it is, but how many bugs, pythons, and do we have? None. Alligators? None. So there are trade-offs, and personally I'll take 2 or 3 inches of snow versus an alligator in my backyard. Any other announcements?
Also, just a reminder of our joint service with the El Dorado congregation at the El Dorado Church at 10:30, the last Sunday of this month.
The 28th.
That's right. And it won't be a carry-in, so each of us will carry in a dish and we'll have a nice lunch after the service. And
we discussed with El Dorado before, their carry-ins tend to be you bring your entire meal with you, your drink, everything, where we tend to just bring a one dish to contribute.
We'll work that out.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. If you want to bring your entire meal, feel free. If you just want to bring one dish, the rest of us are more than willing to share with what we have. Just bring a fork and a plate. So, and I think the drinks will be furnished as usually what the situation is. All right, no more announcements. I don't think there's anything going on. We'll just throw the virus thing in. That is still going around. We keep social distancing here, 6 feet apart. Not hard with the minimal numbers that we have attending. But I'm encouraging you, if you're going to Walmart, Kroger, any place else, you need to wear your mask. There are a lot of people here who have not been vaccinated and who are not wearing their masks, and they are spreading the virus from one person to another. We don't want to do that, and we don't want to be the victim of that. All right, the prelude, Come Christians Join to Sing. For some reason, it always reminds me of the Cowardly Lion and the Wizard of Oz, and the dawn came up like thunder.
I heard Carmen, Ohio in that tune.
Oh, you?
Carmen?
Yeah, the Ohio State out on the water.
Yeah, that I'm not familiar with.
I was gonna go, oh.
But as always, we are very appreciative of music from Roberta and Lloyd. That does make worship. It turns it from just a rote recitation to a real service. For our chalice lighting, let us center our hearts and minds as we enter this time of worship for serious and not so serious contemplation. I'm doing a little bit of a change. I'm lighting the candles during the prelude, because that just, to me, that just takes time away to stand there and light the candles while you're watching me. So the candles are magically lit, and as you've noticed in the last few weeks, they magically disappear at the end of the service. Our chalice lighting is Winter Solstice by Sharon Wiley. In honor of ancient traditions that celebrate this time of the longest night, we observe the flaming chalice holds the elements of the 4 directions: earth, air, fire, and water. The lamp oil for earth, the air that feeds the flame, the fire we light, and the chalice itself, the cup, the symbol of water. We light our chalice and reflect on the light we need to guide us through hard times, the light of our shared faith, the light of a loving community, the light of love, joy, and hope. Our opening hymn is 211, We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder. And if any of you remember church when you were kids and the church was packed and you had lots of singers, how much fun was it to sing in rounds?
Yeah.
It's been so long since I've even heard that anywhere. So let's go out and recruit some musical people and get them in here. All right. Our affirmation, the woman, yes.
Can I interrupt you?
Sure.
I grew up in a little country church, and we sang this song, and the last words were soldiers of the cross. And each of the verses ended with soldiers of the cross.
And it's usually the little country churches are the ones where people really like to sing. I come from a church of the Brethren tradition, and man, those people, they love to sing. They just sing and sing and sing, and they'll do the most complicated thing you can imagine, and they will do it really well. So that part I miss. The conservatism, not so much. The Woman Who Wouldn't Give Up. This story appears in Volume 5 of The Stream of Living Souls, Denise Tracy's self-published anthology of short stories for worship based on the lives of famous historical Unitarians and Universalists. I have a question for you. How many of you have ever been to see or had an appointment with a doctor who is a woman? Pretty much everybody now. What if we went back in time 150 years to 1847, which is not 150 years from now, but when this was done? How many women doctors do you think there were then? Not too hard to guess, 0. But there was a woman who wanted to be a doctor, who dreamed of helping people, and who changed our world because of who she was and how she lived and what she believed. Her name was Elizabeth Blackwell, and she was a Unitarian. In 1853, Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell closed her eyes and then slowly, ever so slowly, opened the door just a crack. Then she opened one eye and peeked. She looked to the right. She looked to the left. What she saw made her heart beat faster. They had put up signs all through the neighborhood, free clinic. No one knew if it would attract any patients, but it had worked. The room was full. There were patients waiting to see her. This was a dream come true. She was the first woman to be accepted into medical school. She was the first woman to graduate from medical school. She had studied in England and in France and received the highest recommendations of everyone. She had worked in hospitals and in clinics, and even with all this, no hospital in the United States was willing to let her be a member of their staff. No one had been willing to hire her at any medical college because she was a woman. She had studied and worked for many years. She was as qualified as any man, but she could not find work as a doctor. When Elizabeth first arrived in Geneva, it seemed all the people in town had heard of the woman who wanted to study to be a doctor. When she walked down the street, people turned their backs, and some refused to speak to her. Since no one would hire her, she decided to found her own clinic. She bought a house in the poorest section of New York City. She lived upstairs and kept a room to see patients downstairs. In her first year, she treated over 200 patients, most of whom had little or no money to pay her. However, in only a few years, the demand for her services was so great, she raised money and founded a hospital supported by the many people who believed in her. Elizabeth Blackwell was both compassionate and courageous. She wanted to be a doctor to help people, and no matter what obstacles she faced, she was determined to follow her calling. Elizabeth Blackwell. And all of you, I'm sure, know the stories and the disillusionment that happens as you confront reality as you grow up as a small child and you learn all these things about the United States, about religion, about all these dreams about Santa Claus, all these things people tell you that are true. And as you grow up, experience teaches you they're not really true. But they can be. That's what I don't want you to forget. They can be true if you persevere. That's kind of what we're talking about today. Okay, our children's story is A Surprise in the Oven. This is a Canadian folktale. Once upon a time, a plump old woman named Tante Adela lived in French Canada. She lived all alone with her big gray cat and cows in her barn. One morning she got up very early as it was baking day and there was much to do. She took a load of wood outside to her oven. Now why would the oven door be open, she said. She poked a stick inside to see that no leaves or twigs had blown in. But the stick would not go in very far. Something was in there. A surprise in the oven. The old woman bent over to look in. What she saw? Tante Adela slammed the oven door shut. She ran out of her yard and down the road as fast as she could. And when she saw what she saw, she slammed the oven door shut. As Felix Bell's barn, she saw the neighbor drawing a bucket of water from the well. Felix, Felix, she called out, come quick. There's a skunk in my oven. Are you sure? Said Felix. Maybe it's your cat. Of course I'm sure, said Tante Adela. Does my cat have a white stripe down his back? I will come as soon as I draw this bucket of water, said Felix. Tante Adela turned and dashed back to the road. She headed for the next farm, the farm of Louis Ross. After all, 3 heads are better than 2. Of course I am sure, Tante Adela said. Does my cat have a white stripe down its back? Louis, Louis, she cried out. Come right away. There's a skunk in my oven. A skunk? Are you sure it's not a scrap of old fur coat you might have thrown away by mistake? Why would I throw away a fur coat? Am I the kind of person who would do that? You have a point, said Lewis Ross. I will come over as soon as I have finished feeding the chickens. The old woman turned to the road and ran to the farm of Samuel Roy. Samuel, Samuel, you must come to my farm. There is a skunk in my oven. Are you sure? Said Samuel. Maybe you saw a shadow inside as you opened the door. Does a shadow have a bushy tail? Said Tanta Adela. Does a shadow grit its teeth at me and snark? I don't think so. I will come right over, said Samuel, as soon as I finish weeding the garden. So she went from farm to farm looking for help. By the time she made it back home, Felix and Lewis were already there. Soon after, Samuel came too, and others who had heard about the skunk in the oven. Yep, there is a skunk in there all right, said the person who had opened and closed the door. I know that. The question is what to do about it. I will run home and get my gun, said Felix. That will take care of it. No, no, cried Tanta. Think of the smell. She will not be able to bake bread in there for a month, said Madame Roy, and everyone agreed. No, no, think of the smell. And it would spoil the pelt, said Samuel. He trapped for furs, and he knew what he was talking about. What if we got a dog, said Alice. A dog will bark. Maybe that will scare the skunk out of the oven. If the skunk gets scared, think of what it would do. What if we get a piece of meat, tie it to a string? The skunk will come out all on its own when it smells it. I have no meat, and if I did, I would surely not waste it on a skunk. So this plan was also dropped. No one else cared to use their own meat if Tanta Adela wasn't going to use hers. Oh, woe is me, wailed Tanta Adela. By then, everyone was getting bored with the question of the skunk, and it did not look like anyone was going to be able to serve any food or drink for everyone who had come. Soon Felix Bell and his wife remembered they had to milk the cows. Lewis Ross said he must get back to clean the barn, and one by one, everyone found a reason to head home. At this time, Tanta Adela saw Jules Martel come into the yard. The young man might be simple-minded, she thought. Still, who else could she turn to help? Jules, she said, there's a skunk in my oven. Can you get him out without scaring him? Jules nodded his head. He walked over to the oven, he opened the door and leaned inside. He spoke in a low voice. No one could tell what he was saying. At last he stepped back. Then the sharp face of the skunk stuck out of the oven doorway. Everyone stepped back a few feet. The skunk wiggled its way over the edge and dropped to the ground. Slowly the skunk made its way through the yard, holding its head high as skunks often do, and it headed into the woods where it disappeared. Tanta was thrilled. All the others were amazed. How did you get him to come out? Said Samuel. Tanta said, how did you get him to come out, really? What did you say to it? I just told him, said Jules, swinging his arms back and forth, that if he stayed in the oven anymore, he would begin to smell like Tanta's bread. And if that happened, none of the other skunks would come near him. Who would have guessed that a low creature like a skunk cares about what other creatures think of him? I suppose all creatures must have some sense of self-respect, said Alice Roy, no matter who they are, and all the others nodded in silence. Everyone has some sense of self-respect, and it can't always be defined the same way. All right. Where's my other? I think we're to joys and concerns. Yes, joys and concerns. Yes.
I have just a couple to share. As you know, Margaret Schreiber, another musician here with our church, participated in a wonderful concert in Dayton, Sinclair, in a woodwind symphony on Sunday, and it was delightful. And we chatted briefly. They had a wonderful program, and I meant to bring it. My apologies, but again, we can be very proud of Margaret, and obviously plays the piccolo, the only piccoloist, I believe that's a word, and just a delightful program. Another candle, if you would, for Colin Powell, respected American, will be greatly missed. In this age of hyper-partisanship and what have you, divisiveness, he tended to be one of those traditional servants, military men who rose above that, and was so just so respected that it's nice to still see that level of respect in this world today. And then my last candle concerned those children in the Tigray area of Ethiopia and adults facing a phenomenal food shortage, hunger, and already the beginning signs of malnutrition.
Right. Multiple things to cover. Margaret, I had to work at the cottage, so I wasn't able to get down there. I'm really sorry that I missed that for her last performance with the group. Do you happen to know if anybody put it online? Usually somebody puts that on Facebook or on Sinclair's.
It's probably on the
Sinclair's
page.
website, so I'm going to go look and see if I can see it there, because I would like to be able to listen to Margaret and congratulate her on the good job she's done. That is a very large part of her life.
Mm-hmm.
We want to encourage her to continue with that.
And I think they're discontinuing the group, aren't they? Do you know why?
Either that or reorganizing in some respects. The director of that symphony is on the staff, if I read the program properly, but it appears that they are reorganizing their programming, perhaps a different emphasis, changes in funding and what have you.
Yeah, we're not really clear on why that group is shutting down. It could be the leader is retiring and no one wants to take his place, or it could be a funding problem. Everybody's having funding problems now, so we just hope for the best outcome for the volunteers who want to contribute their talents as music and share those with other people. Jeffrey Feldman is back in the Horn of Africa. He's been on TV, if you haven't seen him, on PBS and CBS on the interviews. Very impressive. He's definitely gained a huge stature in the State Department and will be missed. Evidently, he's retiring at the end of the year for the second time.
He retired and doggone it, Joe wanted him back.
So hopefully things will work out well there. It's hard to say what diplomacy can do when you've got two opposing forces, as you do in Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa. It's kind of like what we face here with two opposing forces, neither of which admits that the other has any basic right to exist, is almost what it comes down to. So we'll have to see how that works out. Anything else? We don't want to forget the people of Haiti. There's problems and disasters all over the world. There are children starving all over the world. If you watch TV, there's puppy dogs that are shaking and they're sad eyes, and you can send money to them. We were talking about that the other day. Sometimes you feel like you're being manipulated. Guess what? You are. So don't lose that sense of compassion. Don't lose that sense of choice where you can choose to be a part of saving something. I think we've told that story before about the crowd of animals going by, going to certain death. And someone said, what's the point? It won't make any difference, except for that one that you pick out, it will make a difference to that one. So don't give up that sense of compassion, that sense of outreach to help those in need, whether it's locally here or someplace outside. Anything else? We'll light one candle for those hopes, dreams, fears, night terrors, whatever you hold dear and aren't able to share with us. Feel free to put it out there in one way or another. We are here to help if you need help. Okay. Our message is kind of all over the place. Again, it's The Call of Truth by Takia Nur Amin. Kind of an interesting thing, and I've added a little bit to it. And she's not exactly the best speaker, so I tried to shorten this up and trim it a little bit so it may be a little choppy, but we'll see how we go. In every moment, life is giving us an invitation. I really believe that. I really believe every moment, life is giving us an invitation to do the things that are the most loving, the most life-affirming, And to be the most loving and life-affirming thing is always the answer when you don't know what to do or if you're feeling unsure. There's always a moment of invitation to rethink or reevaluate. We are being invited into this cosmic dance of renewal and joy and justice. But if you have to make the justice, and you have to make the justice, it doesn't just show up without our participation, our effort. Things don't get better just by us waiting for them to happen. We have to engage in the better making from wherever we are. And each moment presents an invitation for us to do that. I don't want us to forget that you are tired, you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling unsure. The invitation to participate is still living our values. Living with love and justice, it's still there, no matter what else is going on. You have to live your values. You have to be open. No matter if you're feeling tired, frustrated, unsure, you have to continue. Ask yourself, what's the most loving, life-affirming thing that I can do in this moment for myself or for someone else? Sometimes it's get some rest. Sometimes it's apologize for something you've done or said or thought. Sometimes it's to forgive. Sometimes it's to reconsider how you're using your money, your time, your influence in the broader world. There are lots of ways that we connect with the other world, with the other people, with the other constellations that we circle around. Money, influence, time, all of these make a difference. All of them, our influence, our contributions, have an impact on someone else. If we're talking about racial justice, love is about acknowledging there has been wrong, that there has been harm perpetrated, and that whether you feel personally like you have participated in it or not, you are likely benefiting from the inequitable results of that harm. We've run across that just recently, and we're going to face it over the next year with CRT, critical race theory. You're hearing about that in the Ohio legislature. You're hearing about it in every conservative political race being run. Critical race theory is not taught in any school in the United States, any high school, any grade school, probably not even in most colleges. Critical race theory is a graduate level course studying what the racial history was in the United States. And we'll go into that a little bit as we go along. It concerns hiring. In other words, does anybody know or not believe that there is discrimination in hiring? Does anybody not believe that there is discrimination in the way loans are handed out to different races and different minorities? So, if you are a person who wants to say, I didn't participate in making things this way, if you are benefiting from these ill-gotten gains, then you have some responsibility to make things right. Especially if you then turn around and say, you believe in justice and equality. You can't be let off the hook no matter what the circumstances. When we have a broader conversation about the reparations and what it looks like to repair, particularly the harms that have been done to indigenous communities, Black communities, other communities of color, I believe that love means thinking about the resources that enable life. So what does reparation look like at the intersection of communities of color and healthcare, or communities of color and education? What does it look like to have these kinds of conversations just beyond conversations about money and land that is owed, but also about accessing resources that have been inequitably distributed for more than a century? All of us have a hand in these conversations, and all of us have some responsibility to bring about justice. And we hear about reparations, and the immediate thought is, and that's what you hear, I had nothing to do with that. That was a long time ago. Everything is fine now. No more discrimination exists. I'm not sure how to convince people that that's not really true, but what critical race theory does, it goes back and looks at our history with open eyes and a fair heart to decide whether there was discrimination or not discrimination. The interesting thing about reparations, the Japanese internment, everybody's aware of that during World War II. Reparations were paid to those families who were interned during World War II. The Japanese American families who were good citizens were shunted off to camps in the West, Colorado, Utah, Wyoming. Basically concentration camps is what they were. They had fences around them. Yes?
There were some around Salina too.
Around Salina.
Yes, there are still some buildings there where prisoners have been.
Really? Is that is like a memorial, like a public Ohio State?
No. It's just kind of tumbled down.
If you give me the address, I'd like to go up and see, because I've taken pictures of quite a few in our travels. I will go out to them. A lot of them have little memorial buildings, and there'll be like a section of fence and maybe a stockade or a guard tower. But most of them, it looks like the concentration camps you will see from World War II, from the Holocaust, that basically just disintegrated or disappeared, but they've left a few examples so you have an idea what it is. These families were kept in these camps. They went to school there, and yet they maintained their loyalty to America. Their sons volunteered to be in the military. We had Japanese American units fighting in Italy and in Germany, and were very distinguished service people. Another one is the Holocaust. Reparations have been paid to survivors of the Jewish pogroms in Germany, Poland, Hungary, all through Europe. Those families have been identified and money has been given back to them. Money does not make up for the harm that was done, but it is a sign of saying we are sorry and we are doing our best to equal this. Another is Native Americans. Even though they continue to be mistreated, treaties were signed, land was given. The Bureau of Indian Affairs provides medical help, provides education. There's some argument and disagreement on how good a job it does, but the effort is still there to right a wrong that was done to them. So, plainly, if you're not going to do that work, if you're not going to be committed to thinking about that work, how you can serve in that work, it confuses the mandate of what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist, because ours is a faith that calls us to do things. Another example, let me throw this in, 40 acres and a mule. We're talking about now the reason for reparations. After the Civil War, Sherman in the South decreed that, I think it was around 400,000 black families should get 40 acres and a mule so they could be self-sufficient and earn their own living. So they confiscated Confederate lands and passed this land out. Has anybody heard about how these families having 40 acres and a mule? No, because when Lincoln was killed, Andrew Johnson became the President of the United States. He was from Tennessee. He reversed Sherman's decree, and all the land was returned to the Confederate families that it was taken from. Let's see, another example that I want to mention is Social Security. Does anybody know what professions are not covered in Social Security? Housekeeping and farm employment. Housekeeping and farm employment, your employer does not have to contribute to Social Security, and you have no Social Security fund built up in your name when you retire or when you stop work. Who are the major people who are employed in housekeeping and farm labor, particularly in the 1930s and 40s when this program was instigated? Black families, colored families, and minority families were primarily the people who served as household servants or household help, and who served as the sharecroppers on the land that they were forced to give back after the Civil War. These people were not included in the Social Security system. And that was a trade-off that Roosevelt made to get the rest of the system passed. He had to trade off, just like we're doing today with our infrastructure bill and everything else. Certain members of Congress are demanding that you can't have 8 weeks or 12 weeks of paid family leave, that you don't need family leave, et cetera, et cetera. So their rights, their future, their retirement security was traded away for the rest of us. And that was limited to those minorities. Okay, being Unitarian Universalist in part means maybe you don't pray the way I pray. Maybe you don't pray at all. But how do we live together in an equitable community despite what I might think about God or what you might think about God? This is a faith that causes us to commit to the work of making justice. This is a faith that calls us to think about what it means not to believe the same, but to live together in a beloved community despite our own discrete perspectives about spirituality and the afterlife. Here's I put this slide in, if you can see it, Barack Obama having a good laugh with the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and Benjamin Franklin. How many of those owned slaves?
All
Yeah. So when people tell you critical race theory has no bearing on what's going on now, when they tell you that 3/5 of a person is all that the black citizens counted for as a vote, they didn't even count as a whole person. That's in the Constitution, and that was another trade-off that was meant to get them counted. And here is another one. President Truman wipes out segregation in the armed forces. The blacks volunteered and served in the Army Air Force, served in the military in all branches. But when they were treated equally in Europe, and they were amazed. In Europe, they were invited into restaurants. Everybody treated them just like regular people. But when they came back to the United States in 1945 and 1946, they faced the same segregation. President Truman, a Democrat again, he eliminated segregation in the armed forces. They no longer slept in separate places, ate in separate places, bathed in separate places. And yet the contradiction was, if they were in a military base in the South, no segregation on the base, but when they walked out of the gates to Georgia or Alabama or Louisiana, they were right back at the back of the bus, right back at limited places where they could eat, limited places where they could shop. That's what critical race theory is all about. And this is the one I really like. What we were taught, if you can read this. The GI Bill helped vets to secure loans to buy a house upon returning from World War II. What we would be taught with critical race theory. Many banks refused to approve loans to black vets, resulting in fewer than 100 out of 67,000 mortgages going to non-white borrowers in some suburbs. 100 out of 67,000. So when people tell you that discrimination did not exist, you can show them facts and figures, and I know we're having a problem with people not admitting what facts and figures are, but all we can do is keep plowing ahead. So, this is part of the call, the mandate of what it is to be a Unitarian Universalist, to figure out how we live together in a loving, equitable, just relationship with each other. I believe that the proof of our faith is the extent to which we do that. The proof of our faith is not in some confession we make, not in some recitation that we make every Sunday, not in the proof of our faith is not in some words that we say. The essence of our endeavor, the proof of what we believe, is in how we do the work of bringing about love, justice, and community. As Unitarian Universalists, I think we've given up too quickly on notions of salvation. If we think about some notion of being saved from harm, I don't know when it's actually possible to have personal salvation beyond the community. There is no way for you to have salvation in some kind of perfect, flourishing life outcome while everything around you is suffering and burning, because we're all connected. If COVID hadn't reaffirmed in your mind that we're all connected, I really don't know what to tell you. Here we are right now suffering through a global pandemic together. People are passing a deadly virus to each other through our breath that we cannot see. That's a metaphor for all of us being connected, if I ever heard one. I think it's something that we would do well to think about and remember. Our salvation is intimately tied up in each other's ability to see other people as worthwhile. All humans are valuable and possess dignity. All life is having value and possessing dignity. That's not the same as liking me. This is not, I need you to like me. This is not, I need us to be best friends so that we can go to the shopping mall together. This is, understand that I have as much right to human thriving and flourishing as anyone else, and that I have as much to offer as anyone else, and so do you. So how do we create a context where all of this is possible, where all that human driving and life is possible? That's going to require sacrifice. Sacrifice of time, sacrifice in listening, sacrifice in nuance, but that's what being a Unitarian Universalist requires. Other faith traditions ask for other things. This is what Unitarian Universalists ask from us. This is what we signed up for, and this is serious. This is the call of our faith, and it is critical right now. Ours is not a faith of anything goes. When I hear people say that I'm a UU because I can believe whatever I want, that's actually the farthest thing from the truth. It's time to lean into whether or not we really believe it, or we're just saying it to give ourselves the illusion of faith community, so we can feel like we have some sort of faith tradition. Do we really believe in the values of faith enough to enact them in the larger world in a manner that is bold and clear and unequivocal? People need to know, especially in this moment, what our commitments are. And if we're going to say that we are a faith that is committed to justice, equality, and compassion in human relations, we have to actually do that. It's not just about saying the thing, it's about doing the thing. Frankly, I'd feel better if we did less saying and more doing. I need to have the collective maturity now to do what our faith is asking us to do. Amen. Moving ideas, not sure if we can live up to that commitment, but it is a commitment that we can keep in front of us. And remember as we go through our days that what we do each day does have an impact on other people. Do we have questions or comments? Okay. Offering. What we share today goes for the maintenance of this church, electricity. It goes to church outreach, pays our dues. We are always looking for, actually, and I haven't heard from Lou lately. He's been pretty good at scouting out contributions that we can make to animal care, to any of the many needs that exist. And of course, let's see, did we do that this month? Is today the 7th? Today is the first day, so it's Fish Sunday, which just came to me just now. So that's one of our commitments. The first Sunday of every month, we make a commitment to share with Fish of Dark County. That's for people who do not have everything they need to have. Feel free to come up, put something in. If you need something, take something out. You can go to the website if you're watching online, or you can slip an envelope under the door. Our closing hymn is 32. Now we thank all our God. again. Here I was trying to sing and not doing my job. Constellations from Our Lives. This is by Karen Johnson. Humans make maps of stars, choosing some stars, ignoring others, to project our imaginations onto the heavens. These maps shift over time across cultures. Names change for the same assemblage of bright points. The drinking gourd, the Big Dipper, the plow, the lost hunters. Humans make constellations by connecting stars. Humans make meanings by connecting stories. Story to story, to narrative to story. Some blaze bright, some are faint. Most are backdrops to the great and mundane human unfolding. Let us imagine the stories of our lives as a starry universe above our heads. May the stories we connect draw constellations that reflect a shared ministry that calls out the best in us. All right, our postlude. Kroger was on sale again, so there are really, really good donuts back there. Only a week old, but they've been in the refrigerator, so they're not bad. I replenished the coffee supply, so there's instant, there's regular, there's decaf, the hot water is on. So feel free to partake of our own little Unitarian Universalist communion of our own variety. Stay safe this week. We'll hope to see you next week. If you need something, please let us know. And keep in mind the 28th, the Unity service with El Dorado. Hopefully we can build on that and actually build some community. All right, that ends our service.